Welcome, Brutal Foods. You know, there's always been no place like home for the holidays, but this year it feels like there's no place like a cold, lonely bunker for the holidays. I imagine that for a lot of us, the 2020 holiday season is going to be bittersweet. On the one hand, you get to avoid your family this year without having to make up an excuse, but on the other hand, you don't have anyone to cook you a delicious holiday feast. Not to fear, Home Aloners, for Ian am here, and he have a plan. Instant holiday dinner. That is my objective today. I'm gonna cook a Thanksgiving/Christmas feast for one. I'm gonna do it with minimal effort, and it's only going to cost $15. So if you're planning on flying solo this holiday season, consider this a guide for how to spend your holiday dollars efficiently and deliciously. First, some ground rules. Rule number one, we are going for the lowest of the low effort here. I'm looking for frozen food that can be made. And rule number three, microwave that's or a toaster oven as a heat. My local grocery store was actually pretty active today. I don't go out very often these days, and normally if I do, I'll go midweek, so it was a little jarring to see it so busy on a weekend. But here I am in the frozen food aisle, and my initial game plan was to find something turkey related. I don't really like roast turkey, but it is a food with strong holiday ties, so it seemed appropriate. Thankfully, I didn't come across any turkey at all that I saw, aside from a hungry man that I recently reviewed and will never eat again. So since turkey wasn't an option, I just started looking for something else that I'd like to eat at a holiday feast, and I settled on this Stouffers meatloaf. Ketchup glazed meatloaf made with natural beef and pork in a home-style gravy with russet mashed potatoes. Our sweet and savory ketchup glaze brings it all together. Brings what all together? I don't know. It. I used to eat the Stouffers lasagna a lot growing up, and it really wasn't my favorite, so I have a negative reaction to the brand as a whole, but the meat does look rather loafy, so I'm feeling optimistic. Preparation couldn't be easier. First, you cut the filmed event. Plop. Yeah! That's my favorite part. Then cook for 4 minutes on high, and then again for 5.5 minutes at 50% power. Actually, now that I think about it, this part could actually be kind of complicated if you don't know how to work your microwave beyond a basic cook. So you can take the time to find out how to set your microwave to 50% power, or you can just be lazy and cook it for a random amount of time and hope that it turns out all right. I'm pretty sure I went with 7 minutes or something. It'll be fine. Cooking isn't an exact science. Any good chef will tell you it's more about feeling, and I feel like 7 minutes is the right amount of time for microwave. It smells pretty good. It smells like any other, you know, frozen TV dinner meat lump, but I like those, so I'm excited. Potatoes are just gonna be okay, but that's fine. Looks pretty good too. Honestly, it looks better than a typical Salisbury steak just because it looks like there's more mass there. It kind of rises up out of the gravy so you can see the meat better. I'm pretty excited and very hungry. Smells meat. I would say that that smells very meat, actually. Definitely most excited for the meatloaf. I bought it for the meatloaf. The mashed potatoes are kind of an extra add-in just because there wasn't a standalone solo meatloaf. Delicious. This is pretty much what I think about when I think of meatloaf. I think that some meatloaf glazes can be too sweet for me, a little too tomatoey. But this one tastes very savory, very meaty. I like it a lot. Try some mashed potatoes here. These actually have some mass to them. They're not too runny.
All right.
Noticeably better mashed potatoes than the Hungry Man or the banquet meals. Stouffers knows how to do some TV dinner mashed potatoes. I'm gonna get some of both here. Love it. This isn't just a pretty good TV dinner meatloaf, it's just a pretty good meatloaf in general. You can even see like some onion in there. It's not just meat. That's pretty impressive.
That was tasty.
Stouffers' classic meatloaf was a huge success. I enjoyed it a lot more than I expected, and I'm pretty sure this is the first time I've ever actually consumed an entire frozen meal during one of these reviews, so that alone should speak to its taste quality. Online reviews seem to be in agreement, with commenters calling the meaty loaf amazing, so good, and beef taste. At $2.79, this is a steal of a meal. It's more than you'd pay for something like a banquet dinner, but it's hard to imagine that you're going to find a better instant meatloaf than this, especially a meatloaf portioned for one. Delicious and cost-effective. And while the mashed potatoes in this meal were tasty, it's important to remember that they don't actually count as a side for this challenge. I still need to pick up one or two frozen sides. The first thing I think about was a tasty green bean, a classic side vegetable. I wanted to find something with a little bit of flair though. A plain green bean just seems too safe for this show. Instead, I chose these bird's eye crispy green beans, otherwise known as lightly breaded grinbins. Perfect for a side or snack? I think I'll be the judge of that. The one problem is that this is clearly meant to feed more than one person, so we're wasting a bit of money on excess food. They come in at $3.99. Now that we got the green beans, the other obvious dinner side is bread. No holiday meal is complete without a bread of some kind. Typically I get those plain old store-bought rolls, or if I'm feeling a little fancy that day, I'll pick up the Hawaiian sweet rolls, but unfortunately neither of those meet the frozen food requirement of this challenge. So I headed over to the frozen bread section. I briefly considered getting some Texas toast. I do love a good Texas toast, but I ultimately ended up going for a box of Bantam bagels because I saw them on Shark Tank, and that kind of advertising just really works for me.
Since Shark Tank, we've been rolling in dough.
Are you guys excited? Yeah!
Who's so excited? The Bantam bagels! Who's so excited?
This was an expensive choice though, at $6.49. In my opinion, bread is probably the most important part of a holiday meal, but there's no reason it should be the most expensive part. I would go back and redo this decision if I could, but I already bought them, so let's eat some beans. The crispy green beans were really promising. The light breading on them reminds me of a green bean casserole, which I hate, but it does make it feel very holiday-y. Holiday-ish? It feels holiday-ish. These crispy green beans really evoke the holiday spirit. That's what I'm trying to say. little disappointing. Honestly, I feel like it smells a lot better than it tastes. Not that it tastes bad. Not much like a green bean, honestly. I really only taste the breading, which is pretty crispy, but you can tell it's that baked kind of crispy and not a fried crispy, fake crispy. Yeah, I really just taste the salty batter. I don't much taste a green bean. And really, I like green beans. I kind of want to taste the green beans. I was getting this to avoid a mushy, soggy, from a can green bean, but honestly, I'd take that over this. This was kind of disappointing. Just unfortunate. It smelled very good. It smelled a lot better than it tasted. Man, the internet really disagrees with me on these green beans. They've got rave reviews on both www.walmart.com and www.target.com, with a number of reviewers recommending that they be prepared in an air fryer. My opinion, as usual, remains unchanged. Time for the Batman Bagels. Bantam Bagels, the classic. I've already confessed to first seeing these bagels on the hit series of TV commercials Shark Tank, but you might also know them from Starbucks, who serve them in some of their many coffee shops. The idea is pretty simple. They're bagel bites that are stuffed with cream cheese, and you can tell just by looking at them that they're already pre-cooked. The preparation process is mostly just for reheating, though it is important to note that these are supposed to thaw before you cook them. Once they're thawed though, all you do is toast them for 4 to 5 minutes or until the outside is crispy. I was maybe a little overzealous in my toasting approach. Even though I let this one get a little roasty toasty, it still smells really good. Even this one's a little overdone. I did the max 5 minutes, probably should have kept it at the 4 minutes, or at least checked along the way, but I'm sure they're still gonna be good. Let's start with the more burned one first. Well, it's definitely burned. Unfortunately, I really can't taste much more than the burned top part, so I'm just gonna try and eat the bottom half and leave the top half untongued. Much better. Cream cheese is really tasty. They're not amazing burned. Surprise, surprise. Let's try this one. This one's dark brown, not quite blackened on the top, so it might be a bit better. But it's definitely supposed to be soft, and this is not. It's pretty good, but I feel like I should make another. I know that they can be better than this. They're just overdone. Let's make another one. Let's make one more. Looks a little bit better, but honestly, still darker than I'd like. I'd kind of like this color here to be on the top, but even at 4 minutes, came out a bit dark. Maybe it's because I was using a toaster oven, or maybe the directions are just terrible. It's a lot closer to what I was expecting to experience. It's still pretty toasty on the top, but everything else is nice and soft. You can really taste the bread. I feel like when you get a crust on this bagel, it's kind of all you can taste. So definitely keep a close eye on it when you make them. A very delicious cheese stuffed bread, but are they a replacement for the traditional holiday dinner roll? No, not even close, no. Online reviews seem pretty divided on the Bantam Bagels, with QVC reviewer Devig0216 saying, "Sorry, but right after the bite, I took over the little hole. I got a little cream cheese and then it was really just a dry bagel." So, you know, little holes. Overall, I would say that both of these sides were busts. The crispy green beans weren't as good as a regular green beans, and even if I'd managed to prepare the Bantam bagels properly, I just don't think it's a good fit for a holiday feast idea. I should have gone with the Texas toast, but even then it's no replacement for a classic dinner roll. I do want to say that both of these are better than most of what I've reviewed on Brutal Foods so far, just so we're clear. I'm just not in love with either of them. And now it's time for dessert. Had the Bantam bagels not put such a dent in our budget, I probably would have looked at the Marie Callender single pie slices. That seems like a perfect frozen dessert to finish off this frozen holiday meal. Unfortunately, I was just working with $1 and change here, and most of the frozen desserts are more expensive than that. So I headed over to the Banquet Bargain brand, and would you looky here, a personal pie for only $1? Now that's what I call guaranteed quality. I have access to its soft underbelly. The directions tell us to simply slit the top of the pie crust and it's ready to bake. Since I had problems baking the Bantam bagels in the toaster oven, I decided to use the microwave this time, for better or for worse. Turns out it was for worse, actually. Halfway through cooking the pie, I noticed this little warning here instructing me not to cook it in a microwave that's below 1,100 watts, which my microwave oven definitely is. It seemed too late to switch cooking methods since I was already mostly done with the microwave at this point, so I just cooked it a little bit longer to try and make sure it got cooked through. And I know that it seems like I'm incompetent in the kitchen, and I am, but I promise that I really only have these struggles when I'm doing a frozen food video. And in my defense, that is not exactly the most prominent warning I've ever seen. Hopefully it'll still be good though. You know in cartoons how pies have like this nice round dome-shaped looking crust? This is like the complete opposite of that. This is an imploded crust. Doesn't look great. I immediately regret my decision of ordering something kind of funny for dessert instead of actually trying something good. I should have just tried something good, but I was too curious. I had to know if the pie was gonna be filled with just the typical apple dessert in a banquet meal. I had to know. Who knows, maybe it's good, maybe it's delicious in fact. I sure hope it's cooked thoroughly. The crust is pretty soft. It cut through very easily there. We're gonna wait for that to cool a little bit. I'm glad that it's an actual pie. I feel like they could have just filled up a bowl with fruit and laid a crust on top. I'm glad it's a full encased pie. That may be where my compliments end. No. No. It's definitely the same apples as the banquet meals, which is good and bad. It could be better. It could be worse. They're just hot apples and cinnamon. That's about it. It's just so slimy. Can't remember the last time I've had an apple pie, like a real apple pie. Is it supposed to be so slimy? The apples themselves aren't bad. There's just too much of the slime. I don't think the crust is done. It's still mushy, squishy. I feel like it's supposed to be a crust. Even the parts that look a little bit darker, still very smushy. You could argue that that's user error. For me, not reading the directions and noticing that my microwave was underpowered, I choose to think that it was just bad instructions. They should be made for stupid people like me. I don't think a properly baked crust would really save it that much. Again, this was kind of a joke choice. I regret it. I think while I was at the store, I felt like I needed one, you know, really cheap, kind of funny option to round out the video. But after eating that really good Stouffers meatloaf, I'm genuinely curious to what other delicious TV dinners are out there. So I might stop looking for things that I just expect to be bad and no thanks. No thanks. No. Nothing. I don't think. No, thank you. No. No thanks. Once again, the internet disagrees. This apple pie has rave reviews online, which makes me think that maybe I just don't know what apple pie is supposed to taste like. Maybe I just disagree with the masses about what apple pie is supposed to taste like. Or maybe I've just never eaten a properly prepared apple pie. I mean, this definitely doesn't fit in with that category. So in conclusion, I guess at best we have an inconclusive result. The only item of food that I managed to cook correctly were the crispy grin bins, so I feel like I don't have an accurate view of the other three, but I'm gonna pass judgment on them anyway. Stouffers meatloaf, A+. This might be the best frozen food I've ever had on Brutal Foods. I really enjoyed it. A+, will buy again soon. Bird's Eye crispy green beans, D-. I honestly think that some plain green beans in one of those steamable bags is a better option. Just sprinkle some salt and pepper on there, and you'll be looking good. Classic Bantam bagels. I screwed these up, but they're still pretty good. On their own, I'd give them a B+, just since I know how good they are when cooked correctly. But as part of a holiday feast, I gotta give them a C. I just don't think they fit in with my idea of a typical holiday dinner. The cream cheese is just too much. Holiday bread should be a light, fluffy retreat from the rest of your heavy holiday meal. That's what I think. And finally, the banquet apple pie. This one gets an F. I know that I didn't prepare it correctly, but do we really think that 200 more watts is gonna make this taste any better? No, we don't. And all those online reviews? Liars. I mean, cooked fruit is a mistake anyway. I'll say it. I'll go where isn't willing to go. If you like cooked fruit, then you're a real trademark. My official recommendation would be to keep the meatloaf and lose the rest. Get yourself some bag steamed grin bins or broccolis and finish the feast off with a single slice pie. I ended up making some choices that I thought would end up being more interesting for this video, but tasting this delicious meatloaf has made me curious to taste some of the finer frozen foods, so maybe stay tuned for that in a future video. Happy holidays and happy holidays, everyone.